Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Joe. He is Nick, and you are listening to the inaugural version of the Nick and Joe Show.
I thought we were going to save that for the last quarter.
No, listen, we have our live listeners, and we don't want them to be too confused. They're going to be scratching their heads, so we should open with this and give a proper explanation as to what's going on.
All right.
Okay, so here it is, the Nick and Joe Show.
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Well, you want to attract as many people as possible, and I'm just going to be frank and honest and blunt. Not that I wouldn't be otherwise, but The Combat Zone is a great show. We had a lot of fun with it. We did over 70 episodes.
71 episodes.
71.
And this is just a continuation.
Yeah, the only thing that's changing is the name.
Yeah, and a little bit of the branding, a little bit, you know.
A little bit. But as a friend of mine says, a friend of mine has asked me to say, don't confuse the issue with the facts. So, anyway, that's for you, Glenn. I heard for the first time in over 30 years from the man who was my best man at my wedding, and he just discovered the Combat Zone show and loved the name and wanted me to use that phrase. Don't confuse the issue with facts. So I'm doing it for him. Anyway, so it's nice to have you in the audience, Glenn. The reason we're making this slight, subtle change is to kind of open up the appeal of the show to people who would normally look at the name of the show, The Combat Zone, and go, oh, no, I know what those guys are. And we're not changing anything else, just as you pointed out, a little bit of the branding. And we decided that we wanted to make it a little more broad appeal. It's not going to change any of our attitudes, or certainly not mine, about how I approach politics and social issues and things like that. It's going to be the same guy, I only know how to do one show. And that's the, from the Orthodox conservative point of view, which you don't get anywhere else. So that part's going to stay the same.
And we're going to continue with our gentle repartee.
No. We're not.
I was trying to think of the right word there. Repartee doesn't go necessarily with gentle.
Well, that was my whole point about no.
Oh, okay.
We're a lot of things, but gentle isn't one of them.
Yeah. Now, you notice how we didn't have that heavy metal, in-your-face rock introduction either.
Yeah, we also got rid of the blazing machine guns and all that
stuff.
Yeah,
the machine guns were... And, we're not politically correct here, okay?
No.
All right, we are definitely not politically correct. We have no desire to be politically correct. So we didn't get rid of the machine guns because of all of the talk about gun control and mass shootings, etc. In fact, what we should do, Nick, is we should do a show dedicated to guns. Because, everybody's talking about getting rid of guns now. And I know this isn't one of the topics that we have on our list, and we hadn't actually discussed getting into this tonight when we were getting ready for the show, but I think the whole thing is stupid. And interestingly enough, Nick, today, and I really want to just mention this, give a plug, if I may, for my daily podcast, which is the Daily Rejoinder. And if you're on the Spreaker network, you can download that. You can get it on our website, thinkradio.ca. Also, it's available. As I said, through the Spreaker site, and we're trying to get it picked up by some of the other podcast distributors as well, or networks as well. So we're quite hopeful. But anyway, I talked about this today. It's a daily podcast. It's between 5 and 10 minutes long, and it's basically just my take on, whatever happens to be in the news that day, or a hot topic for that day or around that day. So I talk about gun control in my podcast today. So that's the Daily Rejoinder. You can get it. It's on the Think Radio website. And I really hope people, take the opportunity to listen into that as well.
Yeah, it's only a small bite. And as a matter of fact, I was listening to a little bit of it earlier. And as always, Joseph's a little more, I don't want to say delicate, but has a not quite so rough and tumble demeanor as I do. So he basically, Joseph has the same worldview as I do, but comes across a little bit
subtler, A little more subtle?
Subtle might be a better word. I use a hammer
subtle.
I use a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito. You would use fly swatter.
Now, that's an interesting subject in and of itself because, honestly, mosquitoes do not bother me. I was once on a training exercise in northern Quebec, not all the way up
It's
north.
quite the story.
And it was a survival exercise.
Uh-huh.
And we were simulating. The exercise was simulated. We were in an airplane, and the airplane crashed. And so they dumped us into this swamp. And, I mean, the black flies and the mosquitoes were so bad that you couldn't breathe in without breathing in a mouthful of black flies and mosquitoes. Anyway, so they dump us in this swamp. We make our way to this little island. There's myself and one other person. And we have to survive for a week with nothing else. Okay, I mean, we were able to take whatever we wanted. So, you know, a poncho, a knife, some matches, whatever, okay? We were allowed to take 4 items with us, other than, you know, the clothes on our back, obviously.
Right.
So anyway, they dump us into this swamp. We get into this island, and we were there for about 3.5, I think 4 days. And they came to check on us to make sure we weren't starving or anything like that. And they took one look at us and decided that they were going to medevac us. That medevac being evacuate us for medical reasons, right? So they flew us down to Bagotville, CFB Bagotville, which is the one of the big Air Force bases, and we spent about a week in the hospital. And the reason why they flew us was we were just so badly bitten by these millions of black flies and mosquitoes. So anything, I recovered, Nick. Obviously recovered, and but since that time, mosquitoes and black flies don't seem to bother me. I mean, I don't. I'm not saying they don't bother me when they bite me. I don't even notice that I'm getting bitten. So I can't think of getting a mosquito bite for decades now, Nick.
Well, it's funny because some people do develop a immunity to the venom and to the
whatever it is that they inject.
Right, like mosquitoes have a bit of an anticoagulant.
Right, that's exactly to prevent your blood from
clotting,
so and that they could suck it out of you.
Right.
And
there are cases in history where horses have suffocated because they get in around the nostrils and around the eyes, and the horses have actually suffocated because they can't breathe.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
That's Pierre Burton, I think, made that point in his book, The Klondike.
Okay, had we believe everything Pierre Burton's... Oh, no, sorry, Pierre. No, Pierre's not with us anymore, so... But nor is Farley Mowat, now that I think about it. I was going to say, no, I'm thinking about Farley Mowat.
No, Farley Mowat passed away a few years ago.
Well, so did Pierre. Pierre Burton is dead as well, I think, right?
I believe so. I can find out fast enough.
Anyway, okay, so Farley and Pierre, sorry.
Yep.
But when I said, do you really believe whatever Pierre Burton is saying, I really meant Farley Mowat.
Yeah, Pierre Burton, I do. Farley Mowat, he had a great book. He wrote a few books I really enjoyed. One was called The Serpent's Coil, about a Liberty ship that has its cargo shift in the late 1940s, and it has to be rescued by an ocean-going tug from Halifax called the Josephine. And putting a line on her and starting to tow is the least of their concerns. But the seamanship in it is just incredible. He also wrote one called And No Bird Sang, about his time in the Canadian Army during World War II. So
allegedly.
Well, when I read it, it sounded authentic enough. But
whatever. It's
anyway. The point is that in this
book, he was a gifted author.
Whether you like it or not,
regardless of whether it was all perfectly true or not.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was a good story weaver.
Absolutely.
All right, but in the book The Klondike, about the gold rush, they were talking about some of the challenges that the miners and the prospectors faced, and one of them was the mosquitoes. That goes without saying, because they didn't have insect repellent in those days, not like we do now. But one of the challenges that he recounts that a prospector had to deal with was this guy was walking along the edge of a creek, prospecting on a creek, and the bank under his feet gave way, and when he fell, the root of a black pine tree was sticking out and impaled him through the back of both calves, and he hung upside down for 2 days trying to get off this trying to get off this route, and apparently he survived. But the reason he was telling that is because a lot of these guys who were the gold rush guys and the ranch hands and all that from the 1900s were the guys who fought World War I, and that's why they were some of the best troops in the Commonwealth. Certainly, actually, in World War I, the Canadian Army was considered one of the best armies in the world because these guys were tough as nails. Because when you live in the Klondike and you go through that kind of thing, what's life in a trench?
Yeah, it's funny that I'm reading a biography right now of Bernard Montgomery.
Oh yeah,
and the author comments on a few occasions when talking about World War I about how the Germans on the Western Front, I guess it would have been their Western Front, that the Germans didn't mind facing anybody but the Canadians.
Yeah, they well, they call us the ladies from hell for a reason.
Yeah.
And anyway,
and it wasn't because they were wearing kilts.
That was no. Well, that is where the ladies came from, but the from hell part, or the other on the Allied side, if they wanted an objective achieved, they would say send in the colonials. And guess who that was?
The Canadians?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
The Canadians, the Australians, and the
the New Zealanders.
Yeah, the Kiwis. The Kiwis,
right, absolutely.
Anzac troops were Kiwi and Australian, and then you had the Canadians. So they just lumped them all together and called them colonials.
Right.
Because they're all cut from the same cloth.
Right.
Anyway, that being said, let's see.
Okay, well, look, let's just take a minute to wrap up this segment. Okay, so again, it's the same podcast, the same two crazy people here on Wednesday nights. And we just wanted to rebrand it. We wanted to be a little fresh, perhaps just a teensy-weensy little less in people's faces with the machine guns and the combat and the missiles and the bombs going off and stuff like that. Because we're serious people. We joke around a lot, but we have some serious messages to talk about. And we have our audience, Nick, they're serious people as well. So we just wanted to be just a smidgen more mainstream. And the other thing is, the Nick and Joe show, I mean, look, let's face facts, guys, okay? We're all about, we want to be informative, we want to be all that stuff, okay? But, the reality is, Nick and I are the talent, okay? We're the brand. So we just felt, why aren't we branding ourselves? Why aren't we marketing ourselves? At least that's the way I felt about Nick. Nick needs some help marketing. So if anyone of you out there, ladies and gentlemen, if anyone out there needs a public speaker, you can always send us send Nick an email. Nick@thenickandjoeshow.com. We got that all sorted out this afternoon.
That's right. See,
Nick@thenickandjoeshow.com.
We're not just a pretty face.
Right. And by the way, while we're at it, I'm happy to come and speak at your event as well, too. So you could send me an email.
Actually, we both go.
@thenickandjoeshow.com.
We could both go.
Yeah, you could send us. You could have us both.
It'd be like
we'll split the fee.
Okay. We'll take that.
We'll split the fee.
It'd be like the political modern version of Oliver and Hardy.
Yeah, you guys have no. Well,
now think about it. Is that not from physicality to seriousness versus?
Okay, I'm not a physical comedian. I'm not a comedian at all. Although I sometimes think to myself,
who's the skinny guy?
Stanley Laurel, I think.
Okay, and the other one is the Lou Abbott and Bud Costello show.
Okay, they were another group.
Yeah, they followed in their footsteps about 30 years later.
Right.
And
I think Abbott and Costello were funnier than Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah, it was a different era,
personally.
though. Different things were funny.
That's true.
Yeah, because nobody does the baseball sketch like Lou Abbott and Bud Costello do.
That's.
I don't know how we got onto this, but anyway.
Well, that's whatever as our show thing introduction says. Whatever comes to our fertile minds.
You know what? There isn't. You've got the now that you bring it up. There's not a 2-man comedy routine that's really huge right now. You've got the blue collar the Blue Collar Tour, which is 3 guys. Jeff Foxworthy, David Ingvall, and Larry the Cable Guy. They're a trio, but they don't have an act together. They just 3 comedians that travel together. You don't see that anymore. You don't see, I guess it falls more into slapstick than anything else, because that's not really considered comedy anymore. That's more out of the vaudeville era. Anyway,
I guess.
By the way, Pierre Berton died on November 30th, 2004, at the age of 84.
Okay.
There you go. See?
So anyway, look, guys, there it is. We've talked about it enough. Seriously, though, check out my podcast, please. It's called The Daily Rejoinder. You could get it right on our website. You can get it through Spreaker, the Spreaker app.
Yeah, the app's been updated and everything.
Oh, and of course the Combat Zone app. It's still actually the same app, but it's been rebranded. It's now the Nick and Joe Show.
Right.
So, but I really want you to, this daily thing that I'm doing, I really want to promote that as well. In addition to this show as well. So, this is my promoting it, guys. Tell your friends about it. We need you getting behind us, promoting the show. Spreading the word out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever other social media that you can think of, because we have things to say. How does that sound?
Some of them make sense.
Okay, Nick, stop laughing, man. You're going to make me laugh.
Well, I just got the last word in just at the bell.
Well, my finger was just coming to I was about to pull the bell
ring the
trigger.
bell.
I was about to ring the bell.
All right. There's a couple of things I want to dive into. The first one, let me deal with this, because I dealt with this, because I'm now trying to set up the same thing Joseph's doing with his rejoinder. I'm looking at arranging a daily podcast, or 2, 3, 4 times a week podcast, whatever works out with my schedule and so on.
Yeah.
But
Nick's going to do his daily podcast twice a week.
That's right. That's me. Anyway, I was listening.
You're such a valley farmer, Nick.
How did Popeye say it? I am what I am.
Okay.
Anyway,
I'm not going to interrupt you anymore. Because these are serious topics here.
That's right. I used to do what was called From My Kitchen Table, and I did, I don't know, a dozen, maybe 15 episodes of that, and I had a lot of fun with it. But it wasn't structured, and this isn't going to be structured in the traditional sense either. But there will be, the recording will be better. The hopefully the content will be better, and because I agree with Joseph, I think when you look at this, you have to say, okay, what's the best way to promote the conservative point of view? And short little clips or snippets, like 3, 4, 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most, just a word or two on recent topics is a great way to do it. So I was thinking about Maxime Bernier, and I was listening to him on terrestrial radio talk to somebody, and he was rather disgusted that he wasn't going to be included in the leadership debate during the upcoming campaign, during the writ period. And I began to ask myself the question, and I got into this a little bit on my first episode of what I'm now calling My 5 Minutes. I did it as a Facebook Live. That'll change. We'll do it more as a podcast, the way that Joseph has his set up. But the bottom line from me was, how do you decide who gets on the leadership platform to express their point of view about different issues that affect the country, which is what this leaders debate is supposed to be all about. It's supposed to be a chance for the country to hear the different platforms, the different points of view of the different leaders. Now, if you look at last year, in the way that I looked at it, Elizabeth May had no business being on the stage. I think she was polling about 1%. Well, now she's 3 or 4, maybe even higher than that. No, is she double digits?
I don't think she's there. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, they're in the low teens, I believe. That's where they're polling. Look,
right.
They're definitely polling for real. There's somewhere tied with the NDP right now, I think.
which is a real sad state of affairs for the
It
NDP.
is what it is, Nick. It
Yeah.
is what it is.
But-
Look, I hear the point you're making. I think you're making some very good points. Of course, there are so many political parties that at some point in time you have to find a way to draw a line if you're going to do these leaders' debates. But I think that Maxime has a very important point also that he's raised. And that is this, okay? How is it that you can invite the leader of a separatist party
Now that's
to
a good point.
participate in a national leaders debate? Now, I'm not sure whether the leader of the Bloc Québécois is going to participate in the English language debate or not. I really don't know. But whether he's participating in the English language debate or not, he's going to participate in the French language debate. And the Bloc Québécois isn't even a national party. They're not fielding candidates in any riding outside of the province of Quebec. And they are a separatist party. So how does this person get invited to a national debate, even though maybe it's only in French? And again, I have to double check. I'm not sure whether he's been invited only to the one or the other, but the idea that you're going to have a separatist party with candidates only in Quebec that's going to be participating in a French language debate when there are French language communities right across this country, and Canada is presumably, ostensibly, quote unquote, a bilingual country. So it just doesn't make sense. You want a national debate with national leaders in both official languages, English and French. So there's something really twisted and out of line with the idea that you're going to have this a debate and you're going to invite, at least in the French language, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, but you're not going to invite Maxime Bernier. And, they're not polling very well right now. But it remains to be seen how they're going to do in the upcoming election. And they're running candidates. They'll probably have candidates in every riding. And as I said, they're maybe not polling very well right now, Nick, but they're a serious political party. Now, they're not maybe getting a lot of traction right at the moment, but, neither did the Green Party.
That is
in the last election.
You know what? Going back to the Bloc, here are what the standard is according to Elections Canada or whoever runs the debate. This is out of the National Post. It says political parties must meet 2 of 3 criteria in order to be invited to the debate. The first is that the party is represented in the House of Commons by an MP who is elected under the party's banner. Okay, so the Bloc passes that smell test. The second is the party intends to endorse candidates in at least 90% of the ridings in the election. They don't even come close.
No, they don't.
They're a regional party at best.
Well, they're not. They're not even a regional party.
Well, I'm thinking the
they're a
province of
provincial
Quebec.
party.
I'm just thinking that their ridings are all in Quebec.
Absolutely.
so-
There are 78 ridings.
Right. And that is not a national party.
No, of course not. It's almost 1/5 of the seats in Canada are in Quebec.
And so how then? And I'm just rolling with this. How then does the leader of the Bloc get invited when he clearly does not meet the standard? But Maxime Bernier, according to this, doesn't qualify either because he was not elected under the People's Party banner. He was an MP for the Conservative Party, and that's the grounds for using to dismiss him from the debate. But he is a legitimate party leader. So this is, again, you go back to this argument about is it time to rejig this? Or is it time to enforce that standard all across the board? Because there are parties out there who will have parties in every riding.
Well, look, I actually have some things that I would recommend to Maxime Bernier and the People's Party in response to this decision.
I can imagine what those are.
And I'm not going to say what they are. I'm not going to say what they are because if Maxime wants to know, he can pick up the phone, call me, and pay me for my advice. Is that too naked an advertisement here? Nick, I'm telling you, really, there are things that can be done about this. I think that would be beneficial both for Maxime Bernier and the People's Party, but just as importantly, if not more importantly, for democracy in Canada. I think that Bernier has some interesting things to offer. He has a point of view that needs to be promoted. It needs to be aired out. Canadians need to hear what he has to say. I regret very much his decision to leave the Conservative Party of Canada and start a new party. I think that was tactically and strategically the wrong thing for him to do. I understand why he did it, but I still think that it was the wrong thing for him to do. That said, I still think that the message that he has is an important message, and it ought to be brought to the people of Canada. And if nothing else, he ought to have the opportunity to precipitate a debate on some of these important issues.
Well, this goes back to the idea of look. You're absolutely right. I'm not going to argue with that. My point is that Maxime Bernier, and I agree with the article out of the National Post. The chances of Maxime Bernier getting anybody but himself elected are slim to none. Like, I think if he wins his seat, that'll be a big win for them. But the commissioner who's looking into this says they do not stand a legitimate chance of electing more than one candidate in a federal election. Well,
again, we go back to the Green Party.
That's exactly where I was going to go next. Was how can you justify allowing Elizabeth May, who didn't stand, a snowball's chance in a blast furnace of getting anybody but herself elected in the last election? And historically, how long has she been an MP?
I think since the last election. I think that
was she a leader of a party? No, I thought she'd been there for two cycles now.
She might have been.
Okay, so 1 or 2 cycles, and yet she's polling at about 10%.
Right, somewhere around the NDP. The NDP and the Green Party are close to being tied. It's not an exact tie, but I don't think it's even a statistical tie. But they're not far from one another.
They're within the margin of error. Like the NDP
within the margin of error.
13.8.
Okay, so it's a statistical tie.
Yeah, pretty much. Same thing with the Liberals and the Tories.
Anyway, as I say, there are things that I think that Bernier could do and the People's Party could do around these national debates that would be good for them, but more importantly, I think good for the country, good for debate. Look, the reality is this, okay? When you look at all of the political parties, they are at one end or the other of a spectrum, but that's very limited. They all give us more or less a small L liberal type of government. The Greens and the NDP and the Liberal Party, for that matter, are to the left within that small spectrum.
Right.
The Conservative Party, I think, is to the right within that small spectrum.
Okay, so
I guess just to finish the thought, Nick, is, I like to say that democracy is meaningless without a competition of ideas. And there are just too many similarities in terms of the ideas and the principles that are being espoused by the mainstream political parties. And along comes Maxime Bernier, and, like him or not, okay, what he's saying, I think he's giving voice to the feelings of an awful lot of people in this country. And I'll say this also, okay, Nick, there are a lot of Conservative Party supporters and members that I speak to on a daily basis who are sympathetic to what Maxime Bernier is saying. And they would love to support him, but they just can't bring themselves to vote for another political party other than the Conservatives because, and I think they're quite right in this assessment, the Conservatives have a chance of beating the Liberals and getting rid of Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister, and Maxime Bernier does not. And so a vote for Maxime Bernier splits the Conservative vote and ends up helping the Liberals and Justin Trudeau.
A vote for Maxime Bernier is a vote for Justin Trudeau.
To put it, quite starkly, yeah, that's true. And as I said, I think that's really unfortunate because I think that the point of view that Max is bringing forward on so many issues is an important point of view. And unfortunately, he's wasting, in my judgment, he's wasting his energy and his talent and his principles, pursuing a political agenda as opposed to a policy agenda from the outside.
Okay, just let me ask you this question. If he'd have started this the day after October, started a new political party, would your attitude be different?
No, I don't think so.
Or after the October election, I should say.
Well, because I'm, and we're coming up to a break here, Nick, so I don't want to belabor the point too long. But, I've been in this business for a long time. I lived through the Progressive Conservative Reform split, and then the Canadian Alliance Progressive Conservative ongoing argument. And then, of course, there was all of the issues. I'm not from Alberta, but you and I both have many professional and family acquaintances and et cetera in Alberta, so you know what the split was like there. And so, as a practical matter, I'm not in favor of splitting parties. Now, you may do it for tactical reasons to pressure the existing Conservative Party to be more conservative. That's an argument that I suppose you could make, but I'm not hearing that argument from Maxime Bernier or his supporters.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is that, they just want to air these principles out. And again, God bless them. I think that they're doing a good job doing that. But unfortunately, politics is a business, and you have to do politics the way politics has to be done. And I think that as a political strategy and political tactic, I think that what Maxime Bernier did was absolutely the wrong thing.
So he's like a baseball player showing up in hockey gear.
Yeah, it's not the way I would have phrased it, but Nick, your mind is more fertile and agile and adept, and you are far more witty than I am. And with that, we are going to have to go to a break here, Nick. We've gone way over time, so ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a few minutes here on the Nick and Joe Show.
We both have great faces for radio.
You can't see my face, though, because of my beard.
Well, that's why
I am the bearded one.
The bearded one. The bearded wonder.
I'm going to start promoting my beard as a brand.
Yeah. I'm going to,
Check out the logo for the Daily Rejoinder.
Yes, that's a pretty close.
You like that?
Yeah, that's a pretty close rendition.
Pretty close rendition of me.
Or reasonable facsimile.
A reasonable facsimile.
You remember when you used to have to submit a certain amount of box tops to win a prize from a food company?
Or a reasonable facsimile.
Or a reasonable facsimile.
Whatever that is even supposed to mean. Like, what am I supposed to do? Cut up a piece of cardboard and cornflakes. I'll write cornflakes on it and turn it in. That's an unreasonable facsimile.
Yeah. Well, isn't this kind of stuff, what's the word, subjective?
Okay, look,
all right,
let's get to, we're spending too much time having fun here, Nick.
Yeah, heaven forbid we do that.
Justin Trudeau. Let's take a minute to just deal with Justin Trudeau.
Okay, now, as everybody, unless you're living under a rock, there was a press conference today where he came out from under whatever rock he was under, and to have a press conference about the recent findings of the ethics commissioner, which are damning. I mean, it's huge how the kind of language that's in this, and I don't have it in front of me, I can't quote it exactly, but the damage that's done to the Liberal brand in this, there's several things worth noting. And number one is, first of all, during the press conference, he accepts responsibility, whatever that means, but nowhere in that press conference does he ever say, I'm sorry. He never apologizes through the whole thing. So if you're not going to apologize, what's the point of accepting responsibility? Isn't that part of it? So there's that. And Canadians are going to see right through that. Look, there's a lot of people out in this country who are about as dumb as this tabletop, but even they will get the fact that when you take responsibility, part of that is to say, man, I own that. That's mine. That's my bad, which is the common lingo for I'm sorry. The other thing is that this is going to drag another huge issue back into the limelight. Because, first of all, it didn't get the attention it should have, and I'm referring to Vice Admiral Mark Norman and the mess that is, because they happened about the same time. They happened under the same watch with the same people, and it's all gonna come down and play out in the press before the election. Now, the question I have is, how loyal do you have to be to a brand for you to keep voting for a political party who is as ethically challenged, to put it nicely, as these guys are? Or how many straws on the camel's back before you finally say enough is enough? I don't care about wallet issues right now. We have to have some leadership that will accept responsibility and try and do the right thing by the country.
I think the problem is that so many people, when you have a polarized environment, when you have political parties, and this is not meant to be a tirade against political parties. They are what they are, and people have a certain amount of brand loyalty to their party. But a lot of the loyalty to a political party is predicated on a dislike of the other major political party. So if people who are normally Liberal supporters, who really don't like the Conservative brand, they don't like the Conservative leader at this point in time, Andrew Scheer, and it doesn't really even matter whether it's Andrew Scheer or not. They're not going to like any Conservative leader. So that's really what drives, I think, the loyalty, quote unquote, if you will, to the Liberal Party. And you see it on the other side too. You see it within the Conservative Party that people just don't like Liberals. They don't like the Liberal Party. They don't like the Liberal leader, whoever the Liberal leader is at our particular point in time. The reason I'm saying this, Nick, is because you have to understand that the people who are Liberal supporters, who have had enough, in your words, the camel's back has been broken by those straws, they're not going to vote Conservative. They're either going to stay home or they're going to go out and vote, for their NDP or they're going to vote Green, because the NDP and Green parties are somewhat more aligned to their ideological way of thinking, their policy agenda, far more so than I would argue the Conservative Party is. And so, do they bleed enough votes away from the Liberals that it makes a difference electorally? Could be, but it's not a straight up, I'm going to vote Conservative because I don't like the Liberals.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that it was an either or. I'm just suggesting that you're without having known what you were going to say first, your assessment is quite right. I think that it's a combination. There will be some Liberals, or people we would call red Tories, who have voted for Justin Trudeau because the cult of personality propelled them that way. So they may go back to the Conservative brand, but a lot of them, you're right, are going to go green or orange.
Or not vote at all.
Or stay home. And I think that is where the vast majority of disgruntled Liberal voters are going to go. They're just going to stay home.
I think that you're going to see in this election, because I don't see anybody really exciting anybody.
What's to get excited about?
I think you'll see a low voter turnout. I don't think that there's any burning issue out there. I think that a lot of people are going to vote Conservative that really don't like Justin Trudeau. But I think that, by and large, the people who are going to vote Conservative because they don't like Justin Trudeau were probably going to vote Conservative anyway. So there it is. For me, it's a toss-up. I really don't know how things are going to go.
Go ahead.
No. You finish, and then we should move on.
Yeah, all I was going to say is none of us have a crystal ball, and we still have another 2.5 months to go to election. They haven't even dropped the writ yet,
right?
So it's still a long walk to the election, and you and I both know that in politics, a week is a lifetime. 2.5 months is an eternity.
It can be.
So we'll see what happens. We'll keep an eye on the polls, and we'll certainly stay on top of this as things progress.
Okay, rapidly moving through our list of topics tonight, Nick, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I think is, gender police gone out of control.
Good Lord.
And there's so much I could talk about on this. First of all, let me talk for a brief moment about a law that was passed last week in the state of California. And I talk about it briefly on one of my Daily Rejoinder podcasts. I'm going to be doing that through the night, by the way, just,
That's
a little plug here and there.
That's the nice thing about having your own show.
Anyway, so look, the state of California has passed a law requiring that publicly traded private companies based in the state of California must, by the end of 2019, have at least one woman on the board of directors. And that number is going to go up, and it's going to be a graduated number by 2021. So that's the state of California passes a law saying that you have to have women on your board of directors if you are a publicly traded private company based in the state of California. Now, here's my prediction, Nick. Oh, by the way, and I'm not making this up. Absolutely. That's the governor signed it into law last week. So here's my prediction. If the U.S. courts do not strike this law down as unconstitutional, then other states are going to adopt the law, and then it's just a matter of time before what starts out as a desire to increase women's participation or representation on boards of directors is going to mutate into a drive for gender balance on corporate boards, particularly when it comes to LGBTQ2 members of the community. That's my prediction. Now, that's not happening now, ladies and gentlemen, but that's my prediction. So take that, file it away somewhere, put it in your lockbox, put it in your wallet, put it in your safety deposit box at the bank, write it down, and in a year or 2 years or 3 years, when you see this happening and it goes, hey, I think I remember somebody said something rather about this, check it out. It will have been me. And, if I'm still around and I'm still doing podcasting or whatever, okay, or whatever I'm doing, send me a note, send me an email, friend me on Facebook or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, this is a serious topic. I'm having a little bit of fun. That actually is a real law. But the reason I wanted to bring this up, actually, Nick, in addition to that, was that apparently in the United Kingdom, the UK Advertising Standards Authority has banned 2 commercials. The first one is a Philadelphia cream cheese commercial that may represent fathers as, quote, being unable to care for children as well as women, end quote. Now, I saw the commercial. It's really kind of cute. These 2 new fathers bump into each other. They don't know one another. They're carrying their babies at the airport. The moms have left the babies in the father's care. The fathers sort of go, oh, you're a new father too, etc. And then they happen to see, a food belt with bagel and cream cheese. And, of course, it's Philadelphia cream cheese. And they go, wow, bagel and cream cheese, right? And they start eating them, and they put the babies down on the little conveyor belt. And the babies are going around on the conveyor belt because the dads have left them. It's cute. It's funny, okay? So the UK Advertising Standards Authority has banned that commercial. Now, it's really unusual for a commercial to be banned because it portrays fathers, in a bad light, okay? You'd think it was the other way around, but in this case, that was why they made the decision. The second commercial that they banned was a car commercial for I can't remember the brand. I think it's a Volkswagen, whatever. Okay, it's an electric car, and so the commercial talks about how when you try hard, you can be all you can be. And there's some guys in the International Space Station, and then there's a shot of a fellow doing long jump, and he only has one leg. Okay, so he's got an artificial
prosthetic,
foot, and so he's running down the track, and he does a long jump, and then there's a picture of a woman sitting on a park bench by the road, and this electric car goes by, and it's so quiet. And it doesn't wake the baby up because there's a baby with her. And they've banned this commercial as well because it portrays women as being soft and dainty. Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot make this stuff up. That is the reason why the UK Advertising Standards Authority has banned these 2 commercials. Those are the reasons. And the only thing I have to say, Nick, before I let you jump in is this. If you cannot portray women as dainty, then isn't it about time that we ban the word feminism? Because it suggests that women might be feminine. Enough said from me, Nick. You take over.
I was sitting here listening to you, gritting my teeth, waiting for you to finish, because this is the most asinine, stupid, insulting. I'm running out of adjectives.
Nick's having trouble finding the words.
And believe me, that doesn't happen very often. Did you know?
It really doesn't.
That there is, the last time I checked, and this is a number of months ago, that there was a waiting list to get a rental van to get out of California. And it wasn't just a day or two, it was months, if not a year. People are leaving that place in droves. And this is why. This is part of the reason why people... I would willing to see that there is the other unintended consequence, because I don't think the government of California has really obviously thought this through. But if you're going to start up a new corporation and you want only the brightest and the best, first of all, the state should have no say about it, even if you're publicly traded. It's a private company. Just because you issue stocks does not make it... It's publicly traded, yes, but it's privately owned. There's a big difference, because listing on the stock exchange is just a way of raising working capital. When you sell your shares, you take the money you get from the shares, and that's what funds your company to get it started, and then you pay dividends on those shares to your stockholders. If I understand the world of business, that's how it works, and I could be wrong, but I don't think so. So if you've got Acme Widgets 2.0 and you're looking at, let's say, Nevada,
to put up an assembly plant or put your flag up, or the state of California. Granted, the state of California has got some nice weather compared to Las Vegas in July. Okay, but they have air conditioning. You can work around it. Where are you going to put yourself in that scenario to have the state control almost every move you make? I haven't even gotten to Britain yet. So this is just absolutely, this is the kind of thing that kills economies. This is the kind of thing that chokes off jobs. This is the kind of thing that has real-world consequence. And they are so caught up in California in this, what do they call it? Not social engineering. Yeah, there's that, but virtue signaling. That they're so disconnected from the planet Earth that they don't understand the damage they're doing. You cannot mess around with the engine of your economy and get away with it for very long without any real consequence. This is going to be one of them.
Well, look, I don't think this is going to hurt the economy.
Well, if you lose people to other states that would have come and invested in your country, and you've got people leaving in droves,
fair enough.
One follows the other. Okay, well, England.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The British are known for their stoicism. That's what they're famous for. Stiff upper lip and all that stuff. But they're almost as bad as we are. Like, what kind of knucklehead thought that these ads were anything but humorous? Look, I watched an ad. I was watching an ad from England. 2 guys sleeping in a tent. And it was completely okay. They were obviously homosexual. They were obviously out on a camping weekend. And it was a financial ad for a finance company to manage your portfolio. They didn't ban that. If you're gonna portray men as idiots on one hand and women as dainty on the other, how can you let that go?
Well, the point is that you're not allowed to portray men as idiots.
Well, they certainly did with
two men, but just because 2 men are sleeping together in the tent.
No, I'm talking about at the carousel when they're,
right.
That's the idiot part,
right?
Because what person would put a baby carriage down or a bucket, car seat on a conveyor belt that goes around with luggage while they're having bagels and Philadelphia cream cheese?
Right.
It's idiotic.
And it's a joke. It's
okay.
meant to be humorous. Now, I wonder what these guys would do if they had to make a decision about banning or not banning some of those Super Bowl commercials. Because some of the, people spend millions of dollars on Super Bowl commercials or commercials that are played during the Super Bowl.
Right.
And a lot of them are actually quite funny.
Of course.
And they're designed that way because that makes them memorable.
Well, look, I don't have anything. If a company wants to market its product that way, again, this is where the state crosses the line and gets involved in things they have no business being involved in. So anyway, that's my attitude about it. The state should stay the hell out of the boardroom, the bedroom, and let the free market conduct its affairs and do what it does best, and that's create wealth.
I just want to say about the California law, I have no problem with women on a board of directors.
Neither do I if they're the best candidate.
But I also don't think there's a problem with a board of directors that's all male, any more than there's a problem with a board of directors that's all female. This is not something for the government to legislate on.
That's my
point. Is the point that I'm making, and I guess it's the point you're making.
It's exactly the point I'm making. I don't care if every woman in the company is female. Every woman in the company. Every person in the company is female. Doesn't bother me in the least.
Okay. Really serious subject, Nick.
Yes.
Hong Kong. Now, I was hearing today that the Chinese government is massing troops on the border of Hong Kong.
Yep.
And I know you're concerned because you don't want it to turn into another Tiananmen Square.
On steroids.
On steroids. And it would have to be on steroids because Hong Kong is not Tiananmen Square. Hong Kong is at least formerly a democratic, it was a colony of Great Britain,
right,
or protectorate of Great Britain.
Right.
democratic, had their own government, had their votes, not perfectly democratic, at least in the sense of being independent the way we are in Canada.
Well, we're hardly perfectly democratic
but it's also
either.
it's also a territory. It's not a huge geographically territory, but a huge population. It's virtually a nation state. Anyway.
Well, what the Chinese have done with this is they have figured out how to use the free market system, because they're a communist dictatorship. Make no doubt about it.
Right, absolutely.
China is not our best friend. They have plans to dominate the world politically, where we heard all this before. And there are some within the U.S. intelligence community who think that war with China is inevitable because the two economic systems are going to collide. And you cannot in other words, what happens, let's say for the sake of this discussion, that China does send 100,000 troops to Hong Kong to quell the riots and to assert their authority over what was essentially sovereignty association, if I can use that reference, between Hong Kong and Beijing. Okay, and they say that's enough, and they shut it all down. Well, what about the people who don't want to? Who like the fact that China is, or Hong Kong is a free and open market. It's a huge market. It's one of the major economic players on the planet, along with Taiwan, and that's under threat too. So how does the rest of the world, how is the West going to respond? I don't know. I certainly don't want to see any blood spilled over this, but wars have started for less. And this is a very serious thing. If they will, let me say it this way. If they will go after and kill their own people in Tiananmen Square over a protest that wasn't nearly as large and didn't last nearly as long as this has, what will they do in Hong Kong?
Well, it's a good question, Nick, and it's very concerning. The crisis that's brewing in Hong Kong has popped up. I don't think anybody was really anticipating this, and it could turn into something quite major. I don't know, Nick. The Chinese government could be very unpredictable with this kind of thing, and they're on a bit of a roll. They're under pressure right now from the United States economically.
That's right.
And rightfully so. I think the Americans have, at some point in time, had to draw a line in the sand. What the Chinese have been doing from an international economic perspective has been very problematic for quite some time. So I'm glad that the Americans are standing up against them and other countries to a lesser degree. So the Chinese government is under some degree of pressure right now economically, and they've had a bit of a free ride militarily as well. And so it's not a very good combination. So I don't know. I'm not going to make any predictions, except to say this. This is not, as I said right at the beginning of this segment, Nick, this is not Tiananmen Square. So, you don't just send a few tanks into Hong Kong and all of a sudden you quell the protests. So this has the potential to be a very, very major event and a real bloodbath potentially as well, if in fact the Chinese government in Beijing sends their troops in.
Well, this is what I'm afraid of. Because, let's face it, when you corner a country like China and they feel threatened, this is how they respond. And it's been that way for 70 years. There's all kinds of examples in their history where these kinds of things happen. And Tiananmen Square is only one of them. So you've got a situation going on now where China feels cornered. Because China is one of the world's largest economies, but it's in a trade war with his biggest customer. And the difference this time is we're not talking about Obama or Clinton or anybody else. You're talking about a man who has no compunction about saying, look, we're not going to put up with this anymore. For good or bad, that's the way it is. And the problem is, from the Chinese perspective, it's not that they don't know what It's not that they're worried about what the Americans will do. It's the fact that they're worried about the Americans will do it. Like under under Trump, they have no doubt that if he wants to put the Seventh Fleet off their coast, he will do so. And that is how wars start. Too many of their men, too close to the Americans, and somebody makes a mistake, and the next thing you know, you've got a shooting war. That's how the Vietnam War started.
Somewhat.
I'm being
very real
simplistic,
concern.
but yeah.
No, you're not being simplistic. I think that it's a very real concern. And, mistakes are made, and, people's blood gets up a little bit, and, before you know it, you have a real fight on your hands. Not a nuclear war, not a 10-year war or anything like that, but, shots are fired, people get injured, people die. It's a very difficult situation. It's a very worrisome situation. But I do want to say this, Nick. I want to be very careful about implying that the responsibility for escalation here, one way or the other, will rest in the hands of the United States and particularly Donald Trump. And as we were discussing earlier on before the show, if things go sideways here, and let's say the Chinese government does actually send troops into Hong Kong to quell the rioting, I can't wait to see or to hear how the Democrats and the radical progressives in the United States find a way to blame Donald Trump.
And they will. And
they'll find a way.
Oh,
it may not be real, but they're going to try.
Yep.
It's going to be Donald Trump's fault.
Well, everything else is. Why not this?
Isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have gone a little bit over time tonight because we wanted to cover a lot of different topics, some of which weren't actually in our list of topics.
That never happens, not around here.
Yeah, but anyway, it's still, we hope we are a little bit entertaining from time to time as well as informative. Anyway, I'm not going to bore you anymore. Nick, don't forget, Nick, tomorrow morning when you get up, first thing you got to do is you have to download the Daily Rejoinder podcast.
I think that's a very good idea.
You can get it at thinkradio.ca. You can get it at Spreaker. That's Spreaker, not Speaker. Well, Spreaker with an R.
Speaker with an R.
Spreaker with an R.com.
Yep, public Spreaker.
Right. And just look it up. The Daily Rejoinder.
Where did you come up with that anyway?
Well, rejoinder means a response, an answer to something, right?
Okay.
So I was going to call it, and if you listen to the first episode, I actually explained this.
See, this is how Joseph ferrets me out.
What?
And figures out whether I'm actually listening to his podcast or not.
Right. No, well, that wasn't, I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah, but it works.
I was just suggesting that while people are checking out the podcast, they could actually go to the first one and hear me explain it. But look, no, seriously, I was going to call it the Daily Dose of Common Sense.
Right.
And then I thought, okay, that's just too much of a mouthful. And then I thought, okay, what is it? And what it really is it's my response to new items in the news, current events, some political events and things like that. And that's exactly what a rejoinder is. It's a response, a reply. This is my rejoinder, my daily rejoinder.
Only the people who are smart enough to listen to us would know that.
Yes.
They knew it before you told them, I'm sure.
I'm sure they did, Nick. And even if they didn't, they do now.
That is true.
Okay, so I think we have given everybody their weekly dose of entertainment, Nick. And we have to be cautious not to overdo it. We don't want anyone to overdose on us.
No, that would be ugly.
It would be. So, I'm Joe. He's Nick. This is the Nick and Joe Show. And we will see you next week here. Same place, same time. And that's it.
Good night. God bless. And we'll see you all next week.